Well, good morning, folks. This is going to be a ripper Leading Your Best Life podcast because I'm with Mark Jackson of the Business Veteran podcast, as well as his own consulting business. But Mark and I met doing a pantomime together. I might I don't have those photos at my fingertips, Mark, but I think I will put them up. Mark was Old Mother Hubbard and I was the evil Duke. So it's completely different than today, but it's the same people. Mark, thanks for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks very much, Leigh, for having me.
Mate, pleasure. Well, look, in Leading Your Best Life, what we want to be doing is helping people, whether they work for themselves or not, but the bulk of the audience is probably entrepreneurs or self-employed people, or people who want to be entrepreneurs or self-employed people, or certainly also people that are in the business of optimizing potential and sales and prosperity. So, but Mark, before we get into the work you're doing now as a business coach and your podcast, let's hear a little bit about the Mark Jackson story. Where have you come from? You sound very well educated to me.
Thanks. Not like my wife. My wife has 4 degrees. I've only got just the 1. So
oh, really?
So I'm not educated at all. I was an inveterate compulsive studier. So I think that the best way to sort of understand me was that I was born in the early 60s, right? That dates me. When I heard the word computer in the sort of the mid to 1970s, I had no one had ever seen one, other than a very, very select number of people. My dad, who worked for an airline, said, "Oh yes, it's a big room with lots of sort of cupboards in it," type thing. And then you see them on TV with the spinning tapes, right?
Yeah.
Generation. That was the iconic, and some flashing lights, right? And that was your iconic computer, right? But it just lit this fire in me. Right. And then when I hit sort of around 12, 13, I was an electronics nerd, as many, if you're a nerd, and I clearly am, then you were into electronics, right? I remember my dad took the bulb out of a torch and he got a bit of aluminium foil and he rolled it into a strip and he touched the bottom of the bulb on the top of a battery and he ran the aluminium strip up the side and touched the side of the bulb and the bulb lit up.
Wow.
And something lit up in here. Right, it just went bang. I've got to get into this. So I became an electronics nerd. And in those days, you'd go to somewhere like Tandy or Radio Shack in Australia, and then Dick Smith Electronics opened up. I was living in Sydney, and this was mind blowing. Right, this Dick Smith, everyone knows who Dick Smith is now, right? But back in the 70s, he had this sort of car radio repair place, right? But he sold electronic parts. And it was way better than Radio Shack, right? And then these electronics magazines came out. There was Electronics Australia and Electronics Today International, 2 competing magazines, right? So I started subscribing to them with any money that I could scrape up. And then they published Build Yourself a Computer. And my head just exploded. This thing had, as a box, right? It had a row of lights on the front, it had a row of switches, no screen or keyboard or mouse. I had a row of lights on the front, row of switches. You program it in binary by flicking the switches up and down. It was called a mini scamp, SC/MB. You flick the switches up and down and you go store, and then you go next address, and you flick the switches up and down. Yeah, you'd write your code in binary, right? You'd use hexadecimal. I go on too much. Anyway, he's
not an electronics nerd, folks. No, he's not. Boy, oh boy. Yeah, good. Oh, that's a passion, clearly.
It's just no question, right? And in the day, the vernacular at the time, the saying at the time was, you're bitten by the bug.
Yeah.
Right. Big time. And then this place opened up in Sydney. It was called Applied Technology. Someone's got to write this history one day, because it's the history of Australian computing. And they sold computer kits. You could buy a video card kit or a keyboard kit or a CPU kit. You stored your information on a cassette deck, and it would play this type sound. If you remember modems, but it's even slower than that, 300 bits per second. You'd record your programs on a cassette and play them back into your computer. If you lost power, you lost everything.
So it'd be a cassette tape on a tape.
But old-fashioned
magnetic tape. Yeah.
Yep. But ordinary commercial, residential, whatever you call it, cassette tape.
Like sound. I'd record music and you were recording computer code on it. There's a difference straight away. Yeah. I'm recording Status Quo on the Rolling Stones and Leon Russell, and you're recording computer code. There's a difference in life straight away. Yeah.
So I just said to my dad, I want one of these. So he said, look, if you go, and I was 14, he said, if you go out and get a paper run and earn some money, I'll match you dollar for dollar.
Dad, thank you.
Took me 18 months. And in July of 79, I finally finished it. And I've got it in my garage. It drives my wife nuts, but I can't get rid of it. This first computer that I built, right? It's just something
You're
about
in
things
love
you
with
do
it. Just
around
admit
that
it. You're in love with that first computer. Yeah.
Well, no, like it's an overly sentimentality, something like that. Anyway, so I built this computer and it cost me $500. And the Apple II had just come out. This is long before Macs. This is the Apple II. Candy had the TRS-80. All these very early computers, right? Okay, so let's accelerate things a bit. You know, you're into computers up to your eyeballs. Most other people never seen one, didn't know what one was. It's fine. I was writing code. I built my own modem. I hacked into the university website and to do my assignments, so I wouldn't have to go in.
What the heck?
Anyway, I went and studied computer science at Sydney.
What else were you going to do? You weren't going to do art. You weren't going to do art or history at that point.
Well, I actually started in engineering, and then I did the first 2 years of engineering, and I switched across to the science department, did a year of science, then I did honors in computer science, and then I left. I didn't go back and finish electrical engineering. So I'm a dyed-in-the-wool computer nerd. Ejected out of university end of '86, right? So what do I do? Well, being a cheeky, not knowing what I don't know, something like that, I sort of became a contractor. I was a programming contractor.
Just put yourself out there, right, as a self-employed person right up front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's.
You didn't say, I need to go find a job. You said, I'm just going to put myself out there and see who wants to hire me.
Yeah. Yep. And it didn't take long because the skills were really rare. And I mentioned for your amusement, I will relate that in year 11, so it was early 80s. I worked in a pinball parlor, if you remember them. I was repairing
pinball, yeah, sure.
So the electronics knowledge came in good, and that's how I funded a lot of my buying computer parts, right? By repairing pinball machines.
Wow.
And video games, of course. So that was a huge amount of fun. At Manly Fun Pier, if any Sydney siders listening.
I know where that is.
Manly Fun Pier. Yeah. So I was in the pinball parlor there. Anyway, so I studied computer science university, hang up my shingle, become a programming contractor. And then after a couple of years of doing that, I was working for a company that wasn't very well run. And so I thought, well, I don't know who I want to work for, so I'll just work for myself. I mean, it's just stupid, right? I mean, but I was 21.
Yeah.
When you're 21,
a leap of faith. The entrepreneurial seizure. Michael Gerber calls it that entrepreneurial seizure. Stuff it. I'm going to work for myself.
Now, why did it take me 15 years to come across that book? But that's exactly what it was.
Yes,
right? Absolutely what it was.
Yep.
So, look, I can talk to people, I can relate to people, I can explain things, and I can make computers do what they need them to do, right? So there was a sort of an immediate flash of success. And then I started taking on a few employees with mixed success, but mostly success. So the business grew. And then it sort of grew throughout the 90s, and in the early 2000s, it absolutely exploded because I'm here in Perth along with you. And, we had the mining boom, part one. Number over the years, but that was the one that I experienced, right? And I had some mining clients, and my business absolutely exploded with it. It grew.
Fantastic.
Right? But you can imagine the growing pains.
The people problems, I'm sure.
That'll do. And everything else. Right? But look, the business did well because we provided a good service and we did good stuff. But man, I was suffering. And then I stumbled across Michael Gerber, the book. I was just moaning to anyone who'd listen about running a business. But I saw the thing that the business does as being the real work, and everything else as being admin. Now that just makes me cringe to hear that today, right? But that's who I was. So that gives me a lot of empathy for everyone else who starts a business with the same level of optimistic ignorance that I did, right? Because I
like it. Optimistic ignorance. I'm making a note of that. Yeah.
So so I read the book, and that was a sort of the next head explosion, right? This, what's that song? Killing Me Softly with his song, right? Where Michael Gerber was killing me violently.
Killing you softly with his, but you're going through literally a paradigm shift at that point. You're seeing the world through completely different eyes.
Came on, and I suddenly realized I'd already just worked out that what was beating me up was what I didn't know.
Yeah, nice.
Unconscious incompetence.
Yes.
Right? Or you didn't realize you didn't know. It's a clumsy sort of sentence, but That's what beats you up, isn't it? That's what goes wrong. And they're all things I could have known, right? I had reached out to a number of, I'd hired management consultants from the Australian Institute of Management, somewhat useful, eye-wateringly expensive. I had a number of consultants. Most of them weren't very good, to be honest.
Sure.
Most people work in a silo. They're either work in sales, or they work in finance, or they work in delivery, or they work in customer service. But very few people have had the experience of knitting those things together to make a business.
Yep.
But I read that book, and that was transformational. Bang. Okay, that made sense. Now I knew. So then I put myself on the learning journey from hell. And luckily I started tapping into some really good sources of wisdom. One of them is the Executive Connection, if you know them, or VISCI.
Yes. The tech group, yeah.
Tech group, yeah. So I got trained up as a tech chair. That's a bit further down the track. That was brilliant. I realized I needed to become a business leader, not a techo. That's the transformational moment that isn't it? And from that point on, and I made some few big changes to the business. I remember one day I was sitting there and I rang my wife at 6 o'clock in the evening, and we have a code speak, right? I say the wheels have fallen off. That means I'm not coming home because, and I was just sitting at my desk. Everyone else had gone, and I was sitting with my head in my hands. And I looked at my to-do list. It was about 170 things. When it gets to about 170 things, I'm out of control. Right?
Yes.
And I had the next epiphany.
170 things. Oh my God.
Some of them are probably projects. And I suddenly realized I employ, about that time, about 20 people. I employed 20 people. What the hell am I doing all the work? Okay. New mindset. I shouldn't be doing anything in this business.
Yes.
Nothing. I should be employing people to do the things the business does. And that includes sales, accounting, customer service, techo, right?
Everything. Yeah.
I have to find those people. I have to put them in place. I have to make sure they're doing their job. And that's my job. And that's a full-time job in itself. I find a lot of small business owners get this sort of guilt thing when they're not doing any work. No. You've got a very important job to do, to make sure everyone is doing their job.
Yeah. Right. Nice.
I went through my to-do list. I realized about a third of it I could delegate. A third of it I could delegate if I had the right people, and about a third of it was my job.
Right, which takes it from 170, do the maths, it's a lot less. Yeah.
A lot less, right. In round numbers, right? So
53 or 54 or thereabouts, yeah.
So I worked out who I needed to employ to be able to delegate the third that I couldn't delegate right away. These days, what I would say is that the CEO, which is the head of any enterprise, has only 3 roles: chief ambassador, chief team builder, chief strategist.
Yeah, nice.
Exactly. If anything else, it's not your role.
Nice.
Doing some other role, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so I worked on the business. I merely burned myself out a couple of times. I was definitely suffering from burnout a couple of times. But the way I got myself out of it, particularly one of them, was that, again, the next mind explosion was to realize that I had created the trap I was in. Well, if I created the trap I'm in, well, I'm in charge of getting myself out of it, right?
Yeah.
I created the problem, therefore I can create the solution. And that was, so then I fired someone who desperately needed firing, and felt a whole lot better.
Yeah.
The biggest battles we fight in life are with ourselves.
Yeah, funny about that. Which Gerber, of course, says in that book, business is like being in a mirrored dojo hall. All you're seeing back in results is a reflection of you.
You're right. I love it. And the other way I think about it is, just imagine this little point light source, and you're standing there. There's a massive wall behind you, and behind you is a massive shadow of you, right? Well, that's your business. It looks exactly like you, faults and all.
Yeah.
The things that the business does well are the things you do well. The things that the business does badly are the things you do badly, right?
Tell me about it. It's a ruthless, I sweat under the armpits as you say it, because it's so true.
It's an enlargement of yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So things began to improve. My life began to improve. I began to delegate effectively. I created roles like account manager to look after the customer relationships, and suddenly the business started to grow. started to grow again. Yeah, I got through my little burnout, a big burnout. Funny enough, I tried to, I reached out to a few people confidentially, say, look, I'm over this, I want to sell it. And this by the time I'm about 44, something like that. And I've been running it for 19 years. So I'm out of this, I'm burned over. And I talked to a number of people and no one inspired me. A few people wanted to recruit me as CEO, their business.
Yeah.
But they didn't want to buy my business in particular. Anyway, I got back on the horse and I sort of recovered. Then saw a psychologist, and he saw him about 3 times, but man, he was useful. On the first session, he said, "You are not your thoughts." Well, right? So intrusive thoughts, right? Thoughts hitting you all the time. You don't have to take them seriously. Thoughts are either helpful or harmful. If they're not helpful, they're harmful, just put them aside. I don't have to chase that down. That's not me. That's just my little brain trying to conjure up creative stuff and say, hey, what do you think of this? And you know, Right. Anyway, that was a useful bit of psychology. And I think the 3rd session, I just went in feeling fantastic. Got back on the horse, worked for a few more years. And then someone I'd reached out to at the 19-year mark said, is your business still for sale? It was like 5 years later, right? And I went, well, no, but you know, what you got? Because I learned by this time, all businesses are always for sale.
Right? Yeah. That was another piece of use.
Turns out there was this mid-cap ASX company that had a stupid amount of money in the bank, also known as a lazy balance sheet. Shareholders are putting pressure on the board to do something with that money, either give it back to the shareholders, right? Because they just sold one of their business units, or grow the business with it. So they're on the lookout to acquire. And so I had a policy of I'll always go and have a conversation. The business wasn't for sale, had no intention, but I'll go and have a conversation. Went out of the conversation, quite liked the guy, liked the look of the business. You know, he said, what would this look like? He described it. Oh, yeah, I'd stay on in the business and so on. Went back to my office and forgot about it. It wasn't for sale. But then, and this is 2012, the mining industry starts to soften. Right. So you know, a leading indicator of an economy going down is when the recruiters are slashing their wrists.
Yeah. People have stopped hiring. Yeah.
Right. And in the mining industry, an indicator of things going soft is little mining companies closing down their exploration departments.
Yes.
You stop exploring when you're worried about future money, right? So I was well and truly imbued in the mining industry because so many clients were miners. And I had I met this couple, and they were recruiters in the exploration field. Right. So we've got the litmus test of litmus tests. Recruiters for exploration geologists.
Yeah, right.
And they were slashing both wrists.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I thought, oh, and you know, some commodity iron ore was still strong, but other commodity prices are going down. And I thought, you know, you don't make things out of just iron, right? If the other commodity prices are going down, so I knew enough about this. And I rang up this mid-cap and said, you still interested in acquiring a business? And by this time, they hadn't found anyone. So they were desperate, right? Because the pressure had mounted, right? So we all think that not having money is a problem, and it is. Having lots of money is a problem.
Yeah, so lazy money shareholders saying we can get a way better return. We want to get a way better return on that money that's just sitting in that account.
Right. So having lots of money in some ways is a bigger problem than not having any money, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Not to invalidate people who are desperately poor, which is awful. But you see the point, it creates a pressure. So and this guy let it slip that he was on a bonus if he'd acquired my company.
Oh, thank you. Oh boy, talk about no poker face there. That card was not close to the chest.
Dearie me. Would you like to be a salesman in that position? Right?
Thank you. Course, well, you were the salesman in that position.
Was the salesman. In fact, I had an advisory board. Wonderful thing to do, by the way. Get yourself an advisory board if you're a business owner. Fantastic thing to do. And I went to my advisory board and said, what do you think? And they said, this is the sale of the century.
Yeah.
Put your sales socks on and off you go. And so I did. And I sold out very nicely. Thank you very much. Yeah. And quickly, and then signed up for a couple of years to work for them.
Yep.
I didn't sign up for a couple. I just signed up for a full-time job. Probably really the first time in my life I'd had a job at the age of 49. Right. But then, and just to tell you the rest of that story is that the general, I should be careful. How careful do I need to be what I talk about? It's all right, I haven't mentioned the company, have I? But
No.
anyway, there were some personalities in that company that turned out to be very difficult, very unethical people who could change on a dime. They could be wonderful when it's one day and someone else when it's next. And a little bit, I'd done my digging and I hadn't discovered it, which is disappointing. But he was, and I thought I need to get my reputation out of here as fast as I can go.
Yep.
So I negotiated my way out.
Yeah, nice.
And that wasn't too hard. I think the sort of the middle management of this large company at the time had figured out that I could see through them. And even though I was being very cooperative and nice and I wasn't threatening anything, I was trying to work with them. They, for whatever reason, decided it was better if I wasn't there.
But, it's not unusual that when somebody buys the company, let's try and keep the chief exec or the leadership team in place because it gives us comfort in terms of handover. But it doesn't take long to go, hang on, this is not going to work because you're used to running the show and they want to actually run this. It's like Mick Malthouse and the handover at Collingwood with who was it? Buckley. I will keep Mick in as a bit of an overseer, but it didn't take long for Buckley to go, hang on, this guy's looking over my shoulder. I can't do what I want to do. And invariably it becomes a dysfunctional relationship. So it's not an unusual situation of what you found happened, as you say, and then you're going, I'm being hamstrung. I mean, it's got everything written on it that's bad, even though it seems logical as a sense of insurance policy or comfort as part of the handover. And of course, I would have thought you'll get a better price if you say, I'll stay for 1 year or 2 years or whatever you want me to stay. They feel more comfortable and therefore more likely to part with a premium for that reason. So theoretically, it's a win-win. So anyway, you're able to negotiate your way out, pull the ripcord, and get out of there.
I was.
Good.
Yep. And sadly, this chap managed to trash the business within a year.
Funny about that.
Yeah. So, it
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me. So he was fired. The CEO was fired by the shareholders. After that, we're talking about $100 million company.
Yep.
And by market cap.
Well, based on that, by the way, Tom Peters, in one of his books, I think on innovation, draws on a study which asks the question, what percentage of mergers or takeovers are actually successful? And it's actually quite low.
I think it's about 30%, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah. It's that's right. It's like 70 or 80% fail. And invariably, on paper, the accountants look at it and spreadsheet-wise, it looks perfect. But it's the human factor where it fails, not the least of which is it's your energy, your vision, your leadership, the culture you've created with your personality. Talk about tone at the top. We talk about tone at the top. And there becomes a different tone at the top.
Culture. Clash of cultures.
Yeah, completely clash of cultures. And so that's one of the things in terms of the work I do. I say with the people doing the mergers and acquisitions. In fact, one of the projects was when the West Australian Channel 7 were coming across to merge with the West, the two newsrooms where the journos, the newspaper journos were merging with the television journos who had been at each other's throats for the previous 20 to 30 to 40 years. It's like, okay. So the good thing was Brett McCarthy, who was editor at the West at the time, was very open to, okay, let's bring the people with us. And we actually went through a whole process. And in fact, there's a great testimonial where he says, mate, it was one of the most successful mergers, and it wasn't so much acquisition because they're already owned by Seven West Media, but integrations of cultures. Need to say, it wasn't seamless, but it certainly wasn't as explosive as it could have been.
It's an incredibly successul business today.
Yeah,
extraordinarily successful.
Yeah, particularly as we set up cross skills. But most managers would not have the skills to facilitate conversations around how we're actually going to work together.
You think?
Yeah. You know, they are taking a creating a cooperative language, particularly.
That's level 5 leadership to go to be able to do that, right?
Correct. And the other point I make to chief execs and managing directors, and we know this in the change management stuff we did in telecom back in the 80s, having an internal consultant, internal change agent, the CEO or managing director, who is somewhere near a level 5 leader, humble, but at the same time clear on vision, but an external consultant who has been in and around change and people for 20, 30 years. I said, there's things the internal consultant can do and say that the external consultant can't or won't have credibility to do and say. But when you combine it with the external consultant working with the internal consultant or the internal, that's where the 1 + 1 becomes 5. And I've seen that time and time again. So I think, you know, that example of the West and Channel 7, how the integration can be done successfully, but if it's just done by finance people or just done by left brainers, often engineers, it's not the human factor, which is the
Right.
factor that's going to decide whether it wins, loses, draws, or sinks.
Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Well, there you go, Drucker. Exactly.
Right. If you're trying to get where you want to go, strategy, haven't got the right culture, you're stuffed.
Yeah.
Get it.
Yeah. And again, in NLP, they say it's like asking a fish, what's it like in the water? The fish says, what water? Often people are blind to the culture because they've lived in it for so long. They know some of the insanity, but then they go, how do I change it? Because it's not changeable. It's been this way forever. And that's, again, why you need that internal consultant, external consultant, or internal change agent, external change agent approach. So you got out of the company, you extricated yourself. What happened then in terms of, I gather you got into your own consulting business in one form or another?
Well, yeah. So I ejected. I sold my business and left with absolutely no idea of what I wanted to do next.
Well, other than you had a big bank account at that stage, and your wife was thinking, "He's going to be home with me
It's called an equity event.
An equity. I like
an equity event. That's what the financial planners call it.
I like it.
And I had a good financial planner. Another. You know, I reckon, diverting for a moment, I reckon all business owners need to run 2 businesses, right? Okay. One is the business you work in, and the other is, and it's probably correctly known as a family wealth fund. And I don't really like that title, but it's what it is, right? You need your low touch, high growth, low risk, obviously high risk in short in terms of volatility, but long-term investment. So, I mean, a super fund, for example, right? And it's not just that, but, you know, you can add other things onto it and get some advice around that. So what you do is you run this business. Now, small business by definition is high risk, right? Because it depends on you and it's small business, right?
Yeah.
But the whole point of that is to spit out dividends, not only give you a wage, but spit out dividends, which you squirrel away into your long-term investments. Right? Now, luckily, I woke up to this many years ago, and so I was doing that. So yes, I had my equity event, which managed to give me a bit more.
Well, just on that, who and how, what was the trigger point, or who was the influence, or what was the conversation that gave you that paradigm shift? Like,
okay, yeah, good one. Back in my computer nerd days, I was a member of the Australian Computer Society. Went along to their conferences, and this chap by the name of Patrick Canyon, he's quite a well-known financial planner in this part of the world. Got up and gave a talk about something, and he was talking about cognitive biases and pegging. Interesting little game you can play with a crowd. You can say, so what's the population of Bangladesh? Is it greater or less than 30 million? Right? People go 28 million, 35 million, 26 million, 29 million.
Bangladesh is close to a huge 100 million.
Yeah, well, you're far too well educated, right? So yes, of course, it's nowhere near that, right? But why did the guesses in the room all hover around 30 million?
Because I think it's Australia.
No, he planted this. He said, is it greater than 30 million, right? He pegged.
Right. Yep. Yeah,
right? It's a really important insight. It's a cognitive bias, right? It's a really important insight. He relied on the fact that most people in the room didn't know about, so obviously you were there, didn't know about the population of Bangladesh, right? It's huge. It's a scientific place. But pricing. You know, people sharpen the pencil on the price. The customer probably got no idea what the price should be.
Yes.
So why are you trimming the last few dollars off, which is really coming straight off your bottom line? Don't get started. Anyway, so I heard him talk. He talked about a few things I really liked the sound of him. So I went along and had a chat and Yeah, so that was a good decision, good financial planner to help me
So
build
by
a
meeting
second
him, he
business.
started to talk to you about the two businesses paradigm and
Well,
squirreling money
that's
away
really
and so
my,
on.
my way I think about it. He just talked to me about just standard stuff that financial planners do. I think they're so imbued in it, they don't even think about it that
That's
way.
right. Well, they're like the fish in the water. They
Right.
go, what water? Doesn't everybody think this way? And you go, no. You're actually. It's a whole other language and mindset and paradigm. But doesn't everyone, because they've been immersed in it for 20 or 30 years. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I really encourage people to have that mindset of two businesses. You run two businesses, and this one's your low
Mm.
touch, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Mm.
and this one's your obviously high touch because you're working in it, right?
Yeah. They're nice.
Yeah. So I ejected,
So
did the
you
events.
had the money. Why didn't you just play golf for the rest of your life on that money and go holidaying with your wife?
Oh, well, so a bit of a late starter. I had three kids at school.
Yes.
I still got two. Oh, okay, one's finished. Okay, one left at school. And big gaps. Just because kids, you get what you get. You don't get upset, right? That's how
Mm.
kids go. And didn't meet my good wife until I was 30.
You're
Um,
busy working. You're a computer nerd. You're too busy behind a computer screen.
oh yeah, and sometimes you meet the right person the first time, and sometimes you
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, sure. Tell
Something
me
like that.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, okay, so we've got these young kids, and I can do it. In fact, our favorite movie, my wife and I, is The Princess Bride. It's a cult classic, right,
Yes,
from
I've
the
heard
80s.
of it. I may
Princess,
have seen it.
I recommend it to you, right? It's a cult classic from the 80s, right? The Princess Bride. In fact, on our first date, I brought her around, made her dinner, and showed her the movie, and the rest is history, right?
Mm.
So,
Gee,
anyways, this movie,
must be romantic, is it? Is it a
oh,
romantic?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely,
Okay,
it's
clever.
gorgeous, it's gorgeous, and there's this great line in it where the evil, we'll call him the Duke,
Yeah,
so
okay,
between you and
thanks.
me,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that was your role, right? Says to his sidekick, "Yeah, when I found you, you were no one. You were unemployed in Greenland." Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I first proposed the idea of selling my business and doing nothing, he said, "What, unemployed in Greenland?" So I
Yeah.
became unemployed in Greenland was what I was going to do
Yeah.
after, I'll do some things to the house and I'll do all this sort of stuff. So, I've been running the business for 24 years and 2 weeks.
Mm.
And
But who's counting? Yeah.
exactly. And when you've been running a business for that long, because when you sell the brand, you sell the URL. So I sold my email address. I didn't have my email address anymore. Right?
Yeah.
And I had two accountants in the business, right? So I didn't do my tax returns. I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Do my own IT support. I just snapped my
You had
fingers
a
at
lot
the
of
kid.
crutches. You're all of a sudden, as you say, you worked out, hang on, I don't have legs because the crutches I've been
Yeah,
using are now gone. Yeah.
right. So suddenly, and of course, well, these assets, and I had 11 bank accounts, and you've got to do this disentanglement,
Yeah.
right, which is quite a project. It's quite a few months worth of work to
Mm,
disentangle yourself.
mm,
And when something
mm,
goes wrong with your computer, I mean, I can fix it, but what do you mean I have to fix this myself? Oh, God.
mm.
So all that
You couldn't
disentanglement.
push a button on your desk like Henry Ford and say the red button's for Mary, the blue button's for the finance. You didn't have those buttons anymore. You had
Yeah,
to
exactly.
do it.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what I had, and it was bloody wonderful. You get used to it, right?
Yeah.
And you don't notice it missing until it's gone, like electricity, right?
Mm.
Anyway, so I flapped around for a while, and I really wasn't that concerned, but I wanted to do something. And so I went along to stuff, all sorts of random stuff that occurred to me that it might be a good
Like
thing.
seminars or courses or
Yeah,
something.
right. Someone rang me up and said, "Can you stand in on my BNI group?" BNI, right?
Yes, BNI, yeah.
I'm
Networking, business networking group, yeah.
right. I'm quite a fan of it for
Hmm.
certain, for people for whom it's going to work because it's disciplined and
Yes,
focused and measured. And
sure.
from a business point of view, it's ace, right? Anyway, so I went along to, hey, they have to invite you as a stand-in. If they're going to be away, they have to put a substitute in.
Right.
I went along, stepped my suit on and went along. I was a business coach there. And he sort of said, who are you? What do you do? And I sort of gave him my quick history. And he said, you should become a business coach.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was thinking at the time of joining, IBM or one of these big Deloitte's or something big, because I've worked in SME my whole life. Be interesting to go to the big end of town. Talk to a few of those sort of guys. And just between me, I reckon their work is as boring as it gets, right? It's all
Yeah.
big process, ugh.
And all of a
I want
sudden
to
you would be swallowed up in a big organization, as distinct from having freedom and autonomy of running your own business for 24 years and 2 weeks. All of a sudden going, hang on, I have to report to this manager who has to report to that manager, and soon you'd realize there's a whole lot of bullshit going on in those places.
And I'm cranking out process, right? I've seen enough of that. You know, I had to, in my sort of IT career, I had to look at, was it COBIT, which is a process for acquiring, procuring IT stuff. Some of the bigger companies had to use it. I had to get my head around it. Oh my God, this stuff's tedious, right? I want to change lives in a profound way. I've just been on the most extraordinarily painful journey. I would put it to you that running a business is probably the most difficult job anyone could voluntarily do. Right? In terms of stretching your headspace, in terms of stress levels, in terms of something at stake. Right? It's extraordinary. And I went through this, you know, I wasn't pushed to my limits. I was shoved head first straight through them, right? There's no forgiveness in this, right? And everything's your fault, and you're responsible for everything. Right? By the end there, I had 32 people who I was feeding. Right?
Yes, 32 families, 32 mortgages, or cars.
Right. A payroll of 300 grand a month or something. I was just extraordinary, right?
Yes.
So I thought the next head explosion, I thought this lesson, forget the equity event, that's nice. Not nearly as good as I'd like to be in, but that is good enough. Can't complain. Mustn't complain. I thought the far more valuable part was the learning. That was not many people get the chance to learn what I learned.
Exactly.
That's a privilege.
Yeah.
There's no way that, and I was 49 at the time, there's no way I want to be, you know, stuck in the ground one day taking all that knowledge with me.
Nice.
That's a crime.
Yes.
That's wrong.
Wow, that's an insight, paradigm shift.
Right. Because you talk to other business owners, you go into other businesses, and in minutes I can see what's wrong with this business, or I can see what the challenges are. And the same as everybody else's, right? It's funny and sad at the same time, right? The commonality in challenges between businesses. And I was starting to realize this in my journey while I was in my IT business. And I suddenly thought, business coach. I get to work with the CEO, and go, you know, mate, first of all, they can talk to me and I get it. Right? That's a weight off their shoulder. That's the first weight off their shoulders.
Yeah.
I'm doing it for 11 years now, right?
Yeah.
And then I can say, well, you know, I had this problem. It's okay. You're not dumb. It's a logical thing to do. It just turns out that there's actually different ways of doing it. And some things, especially managing people, some of it's non-intuitive. But once you learn it works. So you put it into practice and it works. It's awesome. Right? So I hung up my shingle as a business coach. And I got a couple of clients quite quickly just through, you know, just people heard about it. I have a bit of commercial real estate in West Perth, and my locksmith came around to change some locks, and because the business that bought my business had 60 locations in Australia, they moved my business out, so I left for some empty space. Changing the locks, locksmith comes around. He says, "What are you doing these days?" Business coach. "Oh, can my wife come and see you?" Right? He said, "We just come back from the accountants. We'd lost 100 grand last year. I'm just 17 years. I'm over it. I am absolutely over it. Classic, right?" I said, "Sure. There's still a client today. They're now the biggest locksmiths in Western Australia, and I'm coaching their children to take over the business."
Oh, beautiful, mate. What a lovely story.
First client, right? So, and then I got picked up by the Executive Connection, and they said, "Oh, you'd make a good chair." So they trained me up as a tech chair. The training was awesome. It's one thing to have business acumen, right? It's a different thing to be able to help somebody else.
Absolutely. There's a different set of skills. Yeah.
It's coaching. Right? And so I put myself on a number of training courses, because I realized, okay, I've got the business acumen, but I'm not the boss. I can't tell them what to do. And I tried telling them what to do. I can tell you it doesn't work.
No, you have to facilitate it so they come to their own conclusions. Yeah.
Exactly.
Galileo, you cannot teach a person anything. You can only help them discover inside themselves. Galileo. Yeah.
Ah, well done, Galileo.
Yeah. Some pretty smart people a few years ago. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
The problem is we keep making the same mistakes, don't we? Isn't that funny? Yeah. So I got some great.
So that training was incredible, as you say, taking your business acumen, but then giving you processes to coach and empower others with that knowledge through the executive
In
connection.
fact,
Nice.
so the next mind explosion, right? Day one of the course. And I can't bring to mind the name of the guy. He's an old soldier, highly decorated, Peter, and I've got a blank on his second.
Peter Cosgrove, the general, became company general.
No, it wasn't Cozzy.
Mm.
But another one. Not quite as famous as Cozzy, but he became company general, didn't he? He facilitated the course, right? He's an old white-haired guy, right? And day one, he opens his mouth and he says something that just blows me away. He says, "You are here to support people who happen to be CEOs." And I went, whoa, I thought I was here to support CEOs.
You're right. So they've been parachuted into this job. Doesn't mean they've got the skills.
They're people.
Yeah.
You're here to support them as people.
Right, as human beings.
They happen to be CEOs.
Yes, right. Okay. Yep.
Okay. So if you're helping them through their divorce or kids, or doesn't matter, because it's impacting the business.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought this new mission of mine has just got 10 times bigger.
Yes, you're not just looking at their spreadsheet and their marketing or their structure. As you say, if their mental landscape is clouded, poisoned, toxic, influenced by something else, you need to deal with that, clear that out first before you can actually get to the
all part of the
strategy.
same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just a bag of problems that they've got. So that was scary and confronting and mind-blowing all at the same time. Suddenly I realized that I'm helping another human being with whatever they want to drop in my lap.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
Obviously the intention is to help the business, but you help the business by helping the person.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that was the first mind shift, and then the rest of the course was bloody brilliant. Just a grow model of coaching and just that mindset. I did the Australian Institute of Company Directors course. I was in Mind Shop for a year. I was in tech for a year. So I ran a tech group, sort of co-chaired it for a while. Tech, I'm still a big fan of. It's great for the members. It's not great for the chairs, right? It's not a value proposition.
No, that's right. Another mate of mine, Steve O'Keefe, was a chair as well.
Yeah.
You're right. There's a whole lot of work to be done. As chair, as you said, if you're going to talk about return on investment, you're certainly giving back at that point. It seems to me, as to sit from a
return on effort wasn't great because you had to sort of raise. Most people hadn't heard of it. You had to lead generate, raise brand awareness, convert the sale.
You got to find your own 10 or 15 people or 20 people or whatever it is.
Yeah, and then keep the group full. But keep 16, I think it was.
Right.
And then keep it full. And God, it was a lot of effort. So I got a new group off the ground. And then in 1 week, 3 of them, for completely random different reasons, had to pull out. 5 back down to 2. I don't think another group started since.
Yeah.
And I just, God,
you don't need the stress. Yeah.
Not enough support from the marketing efforts. So I stood in for a few people when they were sick and things like that as a spare chair, but then eventually I sort of faded away and did my own thing. Look, I talk to most people, and I who come in as business owners, and I say, look, do you want to work with me one-to-one, or do you want to be part of a group? And they all want to be one-to-one.
Yeah, that intimacy factor is a bit like learning maths from a maths tutor. You're part of a class of 30 or one-on-one. You can make a lot more progress one-on-one. Yeah. So you've been running your own business. Let me go to your website then, so that we can see what you've got there. Business coach. Here it is. Business veteran. It says it all. What made you choose that name, by the way?
Well, so I had a quick look at it. I Googled business coaches, right? The first thing you do is see who's around and what they do, right?
Yep.
And I quickly worked out that most of them had never run a business. Right, so obviously I need a USP, unique selling proposition. Mine clearly is that I've run a business for 24 years.
Yes, that's your point of your point of difference.
Grown it from zero, founded it, grown it from zero, sold it out successfully. It's a good story, right?
Yeah.
Most of them don't have that. They're called a business veteran. I don't want to confuse with, I know veteran has increasingly the American interpretation of veteran, which means a return serviceman, right?
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not that.
No, but
you're
coming from the context. So you've been there, done that, as they start right through to sell out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So I hung up my shingle, and look, generally when I talk to a business owner of a significant business, like a micro upwards, so micro means 4 employees upwards, I talk to them for a few minutes. They very quickly get that I get it. And I'm generally able to help them.
Yeah. Brilliant.
And you get better over the years. What's the 10,000? It was Gladwell who coined the 10,000 hour thing.
10,000 hour rule. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've certainly been doing it for a while. And it's incredibly rewarding. And now for some of these businesses now, not only I mentioned the locksmiths, but also I've got other businesses where I'm coaching his frontline managers. And these are businesses like one of them, they mow lawns, right? They're commercial landscape gardeners. A lot of mowing.
Yeah.
And he said, look, I'd like you to coach my team leaders of the trucks. I said, look, I'm a business coach. What do you want me to talk to them for? He said, no, but they like it. So I started coaching these people, and I obviously help them manage the truck, and sort of mental health issues are just far more common than you think.
Absolutely.
When you develop that sort of intimate relationship with people, suddenly it all comes out, whether it's family or kids or themselves or whatever. A lot of them are battling mental health issues.
Yeah.
And
so we say everybody's going through something. That's what we set up. We call Blokes Talk Beachside, a men's group, and again, me using my facilitation skills to essentially create an environment where guys feel safe enough to just talk about what shit's going on. And as the research shows, 40% of men have never spoken to anyone about what's going on in their internal world.
Is that right?
40%. So your thing, you are not your thoughts. That thought has not entered their head. If anything, they've thought the complete opposite. I am my thoughts, and my thoughts are I'm stuffed, or I'm useless, or I'm a failure, or even worse, I don't deserve to be here. All of that stuff. So to challenge that, and then the other interesting thing just there is when they hear other blokes' stories, because most guys, when they're bathing in, could be a marriage breakup or a business problem or a problem with the boss or a health issue, in their head, no one else has ever gone through this before, and I'm one of the really, my situation is probably one of the worst you'd ever hear about. Then you hear someone else's, and you go, holy shit, what am I even complaining about? This poor guy's way worse than me. So there's some degree of therapy in one, hearing other people's stories, but two, it's phenomenal, as you say. That's one of the principles we say. Everybody's going through something.
Yeah, and if you're not, just wait.
That's right. Stay tuned. That's right.
Your
turn's coming soon enough.
Yeah, life will throw some weird crap at you sooner or later.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go to a couple of things, Mark, from your experience in your own business, but also then with business coaching now. What would you say are 2 or 3 common patterns that hold a business back or hold a business person back from realizing their full potential? What do you see as some of the major kind of handbrakes or limitations that keep popping up?
How long do we have?
Yeah, that's all right.
All right. Okay. Number 1, the vast majority of businesses are not charging enough.
Nice.
Underpricing. Right? Because why? Because what they do is they set up, they hang up their shingle and they go, okay, so look around. What's Joe, charging? What's Mary charging? They're charging, I don't know, $90 an hour. Great. I'll charge $90 an hour. Okay. Here's the problem. Joe and Mary haven't done their numbers. They don't know what their costs are, because guess what Joe and Mary did when they set up?
Looked up at Don
and Ben,
Don
right?
And Jill, Bill and Bob, the flower pot men. Yeah,
exactly right. So they're undercharging. So everybody's undercharging, and people think that customers may make the decision on price. Now, in the absence of anything else, they do. So you've got to be, pretty much in every industry, premium pricing. premium offering and a premium price.
Mm.
Don't worry about what the competition are doing. I mean, you're going to be slightly competitive, but people will pay if they see value. So you need to fixate on what value, and this value can be not just the job you do, but the customer service wrapper you put around it is as important as the job you do. And that's not intuitive to most business owners. So that they haven't now how do you break them out of that? What I generally do is I build them a little financial model. Okay, well, mate, you need to earn $3,000 a day to keep your doors open. So now you know today whether you made a profit or not. Now, if you're not making a profit, nothing motivates them like that. Because when they can believe that, well, we'll do this for a year or two and see how it goes, then they'll just truck along and eventually come back from the accountant. Remember, your accountant does your tax return about 9 months after the end of the financial year. So how old is that information, right? It's ancient, right? With a good financial model, you can work out today, did I make money today or didn't I? And if you didn't, what are we going to change?
Nice.
Right? Try again tomorrow. But now, how much faster are we now pivoting, iterating the business, making changes, making improvements, right?
Beautiful, beautiful.
I mean,
That's really accountability. That's what I say. The word account, the word count is in there, holding you to account, holding you accountable, but you actually have to count. And what you're saying is when you get your tax return money, that's hardly accounting because it's it's accounting, of course, but it's 18 months old by that stage versus
it's ancient history.
What if you've had a heart attack 18 months ago and you've been struggling along with a weak heart for the next 18 months, wondering why life is so hard versus let's do an ECG today.
Yeah, exactly. And then let's fix it, right? Yeah. But and I learned this, right? I remember my dad, bless him, he did my books for years.
Right? What a guy. Look, I'm going back to your dad came way back, wherever it was, back here when Dad had done a number of things for you. I can't remember what it was when you mentioned Dad going for the dollar for dollar thing, but even in the early part of this interview, you mentioned the role.
Absolutely. Yeah, he retired.
Of your dad as really a finance coach or even a life coach at that point. So congratulations to your dad.
Yeah, absolutely. And he'd come in and he'd do the books for me, and then he came over to my desk and he said, "You're losing money," and wandered off home. I know, oh, really? I'm doing my IT stuff. Do I have to worry about money? All right. So I built one of these little business models, one of these little profit models, my first one. And I went, holy crap.
So can I just ask, what was his profession? What was he? Where did he get his education or his financial literacy from?
Classic. Left school at 15.
Yeah.
End of World War II. Joined Commonwealth Bank, where they used to fill in the ledger with a fountain pen in copper plate. I reckon this would have been 1945.
Yeah, right.
Right. So he could run his finger down a column of numbers and then tell you the total, right?
What a guy. So he was very financial or numerically literate and they're therefore financially literate.
Yeah. Certainly at a cash level. And so he's doing my books, and so I did my profit model. I worked out that I wasn't charging enough. Now, the mind shift that happens when you do that, right? When you talk to a customer, you say, I need to charge you more. The customer puts on an act. It's all a game. Right? Now, if I didn't know my costs, I'd go, okay, all right, yeah, I'll give you a discount. Right? But when you know your costs, you sit there and you go, right? It's a complete, you develop a backbone.
Yes, you develop a backbone. I like it.
Because you know your costs. So no one can bully you out of a bit of extra margin because you know your costs. When you don't know your costs, you can give away. If your business is making 10% profit, what does a 10% discount do? It's a 100% removal of your profits.
Yeah.
Right? Those last few dollars are everything.
Yes.
Right. So what do they say? Revenue is vanity. Cash is sanity. Profit is reality. And discounting is profanity.
Oh, mate, that's a T-shirt. That's a T-shirt or even a tattoo. My God.
Got a little bit wrong. Okay, so revenue vanity. Profit is sanity. Cash is reality. Discounting is profanity.
Man, beautiful.
I get the laugh.
I'm glad we've recorded that. Well, you're reminding me of my mate Brad Mallon runs Mallon Events. The concert, fills up Kings Park, but he said it's the profit is in the last 3 to 4 to 500 tickets.
Right.
You've got to you can have 4,500 people there, but it's the 4.5 to 5.5 or the last 500 tickets where you actually start making money.
Right. Well, the other way to look at it, if you're a 9 to 5 business, you start making money at 4:15.
Yeah, exactly. No, but you're reminding me, one of the great sales coaches out of America, which, the Americans sometimes annoy the crap out of us, but this guy, Grant Cardone, who is an in-your-face sales trainer person, but one of the great negotiating pieces that he said at one point, in terms of discount, he goes, mate, I've given you all I can give you. I've given you all the blood I can give. Like in terms of pushing back on, you sharpen your pencil, mate. I've given you all I can give. There's nothing more to give there.
Because he knows how much he's got to give.
Yes, that's
so
right.
You can say that with courage and conviction.
Yes,
and
yes.
that conviction comes through your pause.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And the customer caves.
That's right. That's
or
right.
Or you can say, clearly our service is not for you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And again, you're talking here.
They want you badly.
Yeah, well, we talk about NLP. Well, that's right. That's another thing around. They want what they can't have, which again is the takeaway. But NLP talks about state is contagious. Your state is contagious. So if it's anxiety, that's contagious. But if it's confidence and certainty, that's also contagious. Then the client wants to buy confidence and certainty. And they also mention frame control. The person with the strongest frame wins the conversation. So if your frame is strong around, I'm delivering incredible value, there's no way this price can be any lower than it is, versus, as you say, a weak frame, well, the client picks that up. It's all, as you say, conscious conversation versus subconscious conversation. And so much of it goes on, particularly in I call it the negotiation argy-bargy. The argy-bargy dance. Years ago, I heard Colin Barnett, the Premier of West Australia, talking about, I think there was a big issue with BHP on mining royalties or something, and he went, look, there'll be argy-bargy, and somewhere in there, we'll then settle on a number. Knowing that it's like, I'm not worried about, we're in the middle of argy-bargy right now, and you've got to be willing and know how to play argy-bargy. Yes. And as one person told me years ago, he said, you never make as much money as when you're negotiating. So, you know what I mean? Like, so in that 30 seconds where you go, mate, I've given you all I can give, and there's real value in what we're doing because A, B, C, D, and E. And this, if anything, is actually a bloody no-brainer. So I can't move on that price. This is a great deal. And if it can't be a great deal, then maybe we're not for each other. Now that took 10 to 30 seconds, but that could protect 5 grand, 10 grand, 100 grand, 200, whatever the number is. And you've just made yourself that money in that 10 to 30 seconds. What are your comments in regard to that?
Yeah. Look, absolutely, completely agree. And in fact, there's lots of techniques, right? Another one is to say, we could charge you more and we could do this extra thing for you.
Yeah. So
you
use it as a leverage to go even more. Yeah, exactly.
So, we're fighting over a piece of pie. Why don't we get a bigger pie? We both get a bigger piece.
Yeah, nice. And again, in my mission and passion is, having gone through university and not learned any of this in my course, to say there's all these highly educated people out there, accountants, lawyers, business consultants, engineers. In the absence of teaching people some of the things we're talking about right now, they will cave, they will sell their prices or their services at cost or below cost, or not. They'll be leaving money on the table. Or more to the point is, again, Cardone and others say, you've just taken food out of your kids' mouths, or you've just taken a holiday to Bali or Europe off your kids because you have not developed the muscles or the skills to do argy-bargy or know how to present your services.
Absolutely right, Leigh. I mean, and look, it's worse than that in some ways. I've encouraged clients to put their prices up, and again, they have to reach that decision. Right. So I remember one been charging, it was $90 an hour. That number stuck in my head. Right. And I said, look, you got to put your prices up. And they said, no, all our clients will leave. So I said, look, do an experiment for the next 9. I know this is not statistically significant, but it's what I had. I said, for the next 9 calls that come in, the next leads that come in, right, charge 3 of them $91 an hour. 3 of them $95 an hour, and quote, 3 of them $98 an hour. Right? So they agreed to this because they could afford to lose those sort of 9 leads. There's a young bloke on the mezzanine floor, quite often these little factories, that little mezzanine floor, right? So we brought him down, we briefed him on what we wanted, and I was meeting with him every 2 weeks. So 2 weeks later, I said, how did you go with that? Said, I don't know. Let's get the young bloke down to the mezzanine floor. Comes down to the mezzanine floor. I said, how did you go? He said, I charged them all 98.
Fantastic.
And what happened? And they all bought.
Yeah. Wow.
Bang. Right. Wow. So it was a mum and dad running this business. So I think it was the mum who had the fear that all the customers would leave. And she just went, that's it. $98 an hour, we're changing. And their profit went from 0 to 20 grand a month. Bang. Just like that.
That's fantastic, mate.
Now, here comes the sad part. Why didn't we do this 10 years ago? Right? So 10 years, we've been making no profit. And what does that mean? Or what are the implications for their long term? Those 10 years of your life, they're gone. You're not getting them back.
Absolutely. As I say, wasted opportunity. I mean, no need to give yourself cancer fretting about it, but the point there is, as you say, that's one story. I call that a strategic story. That's a story you could tell over and over, and I'm sure you do tell over and over again, because in fact, it's the cautionary tale story, and I think I noted on your blog, cautionary tale for business owners, that in sales and negotiation, you want, I call them strategic stories and cautionary tales. Strategic stories where you're talking about how you've helped clients, and essentially people say, well, gee, if he's done that for that client, he can do it for me. But it needs to be done in a systematic, coming back to Michael Gerber, I say to people, you want to capture your strategic stories, both capture your cautionary tale strategic stories and capture your, success stories, so that you can, in the old days, I used to have them on index cards because I'd forget them because I'm so just in the moment helping that client. I've forgotten whatever I've done with 10 clients ago, but by writing them on the card, that's a story. I need to tell that story. And most people, I find, the accountants I'm doing business with right now, I start asking them, how did you win that client and what's happened with them? And they say, well, they started off, they were doing 1 million. Now they're doing 7 million. What the hell? That's a strategic story. You guys, who have you told that to? We've not told it to anyone. What the hell? It needs to be shouted from the rafters, It does. It's a strategic story. But listen, that was just one of your two or three. The numerical people are going to go, Leigh asked for 3 tips and you've only given 1. Underprice, which I'll call that to 2, charge premium pricing. Give me one other danger. This comes again, the reason I'm asking this, from the book In a Game of Golf, performance equals potential minus interference. So Peter Senge and others say the quickest way to improve the performance of any system is take off the handbrakes. Where are the limitations? Where are the blockages? So you've gone straight away. Underpricing is one of the handbrakes, and of course that's a mental handbrake on the business owner. What's another danger, limitation, handbrake, common pitfall failure that you see in businesses besides underpricing?
Okay, if I'm only allowed one more, go with crap underdelegated. That's the classic. Absolutely.
You're going to say crap delegation, yeah.
Underdelegated, however you want to say it, right?
Yeah.
Both. Right. And in my tech group, I had businesses with like 400 employees.
Yes.
And they were underdelegated. The CEO was not delegating enough.
Yes.
Right. It's just the problem is rife.
Yes. Why is that, do you think?
Oh. Okay. Now you've got me. I don't have a answer.
Well, I think part of my answer is it's old patterns, because when they started with 2 employees, they were doing A, B, C, D, E, F, G jobs, and now they've got 400 and they're still trying to do the same jobs and not only that, coming back to the Michael Gerber thing of, you start off as a technician, then you become a manager supervisor where you're running 3 or 4 or 5 people, but eventually you're a business leader entrepreneur. But if you, as a business leader entrepreneur, essentially your hands are off the tools. As you said, they're handling those 3 areas of strategy and cheerleader and so on and so on. Literally, I was in a company, one of my construction company clients the other day, and the maintenance manager, at the moment, she's managing a team that I think handles 4 clients, but they're about to go to 9 and 10 clients. I said, well, you can't have the same structure. You can't have, like at the moment, I said, how many people are reporting to? I think she said 10 or 14. I said, okay, well, you can't have 25 people reporting to you. So you're going to have to put a structure in place which again, my mate Brian Cook at Carlton, it took over Carlton Footy Club as chief exec, and he said when I went there, I think he said there was something like 16 or 18 managers reporting to the CEO, and he's just going, okay, that's got to change. You know, we've got to.
Yeah,
it can only be 5 or 6
I've
or
worked for
whatever the
those.
appropriate number is, but certainly not 18. But people, you know, and I say the beautiful thing is about nature. Nature has the concept of mitosis. The cell gets a certain size, then it divides. The cell gets a certain size, then it divides. It doesn't keep getting fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter. Nature itself is an insight into how we should be working, which even Richard Branson said, I'd prefer office buildings with no more than 50 people in them, because as we start getting bigger, we stop losing that intimacy of the small business. So it's like, how do I get a business and then divide. So that's my part of my thinking. Not only that, ego. Literally, I was in the meeting we ran yesterday, and one of the guys, he runs a business Monday to Friday, a security business, electrical fences, and on weekends he runs a charter boat business. And I said, well, what about your wife? He goes, oh, well, I'm separated a couple of years ago. I said, well, gee, that's interesting. I mean, you know, that's going to happen, isn't it? It's hard. What wife is going to put up with that? But he loves being busy. He loves being around people. He loves making things happen. So it's tied in now into his DNA. In fact, he said, dairy farmers, we work 7 days a week. So it's just, I was brought up that way. But of course, you need a certain wife partner.
There's a lack of balance here, right?
Absolutely.
You know, there's family, friends, finances, work. Yeah, there's a bunch. However you divide up the wheel, right? You need to balances everything. Right? You need to live your life in balance. And the question you'd really want to ask him is, do you feel your life is balanced? Right? And look, if he feels it's balanced, it's his choice.
Yeah, that's right. It's his choice. And I think it comes back into, really comes talk about deep into personality. He's clearly getting more vibe, fun, sense of self-worth out of those things than whatever those other things are. Of course, there's collateral damage. But coming back to why don't people delegate, I think part of it is old patterns. They're still behaving as if they've got 3 people and now they've got 300. And at the same time, why does John Hughes keep working, or Warren Buffett, or Rupert Murdoch? Because, like it's Kerry Packer said, he tried to retire, but he realized he got way more, he didn't say intrinsic motivation, but he got way more fun and drive out of doing deals and making things happen than being on the polo course or the golf course. So it's a very complicated, but I use the other example as one of my old clients. I called him Mr. Teflon. It was like a Teflon fry pan. Someone would come with him with a problem. He'd say to the person, what do you think you should do? I think I should do A, B, C, D. And either he'd go, good idea, go do it. Or he'd go, well, actually, that's good, but maybe you should do that. Now go away and do it. But nothing stuck. Oh, okay, mate, I'll solve that. Okay, I'll take that on. I'll do it. I'll solve. Okay, don't worry, I'll fix it. You know? So comment on what I just said.
That's a mindset to develop.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Push the work downwards. Stop doing it yourself.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a range of, for any difficult problem, there's never any one cause.
No.
The problem wouldn't be as common if there was one cause. So I think you've identified some really good ones there. I think, when we start a business, we're doing everything, right? What we don't understand is just how many roles we have. So, for example, looking after one of the ceilings I see, there's a few ceilings that businesses bump up against, and they've got to break through them, and then they stop at the next one, right? So the first one, for example, is you're doing all the work yourself. Now you employ someone else to do the work. You're sending them out there to look after the customer or do the job. How do you know they're doing a quality job? Right? They drop the ball. They don't do a quality job. You lose the customer. Okay. So you've got to find a way of closing that loop so that you, without having to look over their shoulder the whole time, can still tell they're doing the right job. So it's a quality ceiling. It's the first ceiling. The next major ceiling I see in businesses is, and I hit this one hard, is customer relationships. So I work with businesses at about 20 people. When I've come in, there have been about 20 businesses, 20 staff. And the boss is looking after all the customer relationships. And of course he's doing badly, right? Because they've got, 100 clients or so, professional services, they've got 100 clients or so, can't keep in touch with 100 people, right? He's trying to. So he's juggling like crazy. The loudest, squeakiest wheels are the ones that get the attention. The rest are just drifting off. We put an account manager layer in. Doesn't matter what you call them, they are account managers. They maintain the customer relationships, right? Bang, the company's now 60.
Beautiful.
So that was a ceiling that had to be broken through. So,
Mm.
so why did he fail to delegate that? Because it never occurred to him that that's a role you could delegate.
Yes.
There's a bit of that going on as well.
Yes. Yes.
Then
Yes.
there's a bit of the control freak thing. Now, you should be a control freak if you're a business owner. You should be a control freak about the outcome that the customer cares about. Everything else, no. Right? So you say to your employee, here is the outcome we have to achieve for the customer. Why? Because the customer cares about it. It's why they employ us. I don't care how you achieve it, but you have to achieve it. And here's how I'm going to measure it. Do you see where you need to be the dictator versus the Democrat?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. You be uncompromising on customer outcome. I want that customer happy. I have a thing we call the R factor, which came off the back of the Tom Peters book, where he said 15% of customers leave because of a better product, 15% leave because of a cheaper product, 29% leave because of too infrequent contact, and 49% leave because the quality of the contact they got wasn't what they wanted or expected. So I said almost 70% of the reason they leave has got nothing to do with the product or the price. It's actually the frequency times quality of contact. So I said the R factor, the relationship, is frequency times quality of contact. And therefore we go, well, how frequent should we be in contact? And then what does quality contact look like? So I built a whole program around that. And then we say that, and what we want is we want a lifetime relationship with that customer. We want them, their kids, their cousins, their mothers. We call it R&R, repeat business and referrals. So, mate, we've been going for almost an hour and a quarter. I can see we're going to have to do a part 2 on this one, Mark. We haven't even talked about old Mother Hubbard. So let me just ask you this before I move into the home straight, because we could go for 2 hours, but I don't want to do that today. One, is there anything we haven't covered you'd like to talk about today before we move into the home straight?
Well, yeah, I can talk under wet concrete, Leigh. So
okay, all right. Well, I think we should do more of this as we go through, because I haven't talked to you about what books you're reading or what your day looks like or any of those things. But I think we should do that another time, Mark, to delve down even further, because as we're talking here, I've got my notes. Let me just go through some of the things in no particular order, but Dick Smith, a powerful influence on you. And you electronics nerd, talk about following your passion. Bitten by the bug, the computer bug. You reminded me of a goalkeeper called Andrew Stewart. I'll never forget. It was 1980. Came to one of our parties. Was it an Amstrad or some little, what the hell is that? It's a computer. He was a computer guy, right? He was a nerd. There's no doubt about it. Goalkeepers are a bit different anyway. Dad, the role of your dad in helping set your mindset around money in particular, and obviously his bank background, the 3 roles of a CEO: chief ambassador, chief team builder, chief strategist. You are not your thoughts. The running of the 2 businesses, the equity event, the sale of the century, that's you. The importance of an advisory board, the business as a shadow of you. The number of times you've used the term, I had a mind explosion, which you might call a paradigm shift or a mind explosion. The dangers, underpricing, which means premium price, and then, as you say, crap delegation, pushing the work downward. And I love you saying, don't be buried with that knowledge and those lessons that you have as an asset. Share them. Be a control freak about customer outcomes. I love it. People will pay if they see value. The power of the financial model and looking at what's it costing you. Know your cost. You develop backbone when you do that. And then the whole, as you say, gross profit, vanity, sanity, profanity, whatever the other one. So, mate, absolutely fantastic. Anything you'd like to say, as having summed that up? Anything you'd like to say before I move into that final piece?
No, I could talk all day, right? It's making a profound difference to business owners, because it's lonely, right?
Yes.
It's incredibly lonely. Your partner's sick of hearing it, right?
Yes.
You can't share it with your kids. I've worked out of a medium-sized business, you're about 0.5% of the population. The chances are you don't have any friends who are doing the same thing. Who do you share? It's incredibly lonely.
Yep.
Right? And most people you talk to about it, they don't get it.
That's
So
right.
it's really important that coaching works, as you well know. It makes a profound difference.
Yeah.
Or an advisory board, it's just a variation on the same thing.
Yeah.
And it really helps that business owner, entrepreneur. So I have two more things, right?
Yes.
One is when you talk, you get your thoughts in order.
Yes.
So who are you talking to?
Yes.
And furthermore, when you think and you talk, you get your emotions in order.
Yes.
Right? It's a Brené Brown thing, right?
Beautiful.
That's how you deflate them, right? By listening to what they're telling you. Don't necessarily do what they're saying. You still got to listen to them to bring them down. So don't show up and throw up, right? You've got to get a control of what's going on in your emotions, and you've got to be able to think things through. When do you do your thinking? Who do you talk to so you can straighten out your thinking?
Yeah, beautiful, mate. Well, literally, we set up this thing we called Lifter. Lyfta is a Swedish word to lift and raise up, and it's a process I developed, and we used it just yesterday with 15 business owners in the accountants' boardroom. And the 15 business owners, that you could see, they go, wow, we've never been in a room where one, as you say, I get them at the front of the room, say, okay, what's going on in your business, and what do you see some of the problems in it? And they do it. Then I want the group to brainstorm, immerse them in ideas, and they're not allowed to knock them back. And they just go, wow, I hadn't thought of that. And I make the point, but ideas are going to come at you, and you're going to go, why didn't I think of that? Because, as you say, it's lonely. And
you can't think of everything.
No, that's right.
Those ideas, let's say out of 10 ideas, 4 you've thought of, 4 are implausible, which is polite for dumb ideas.
Yeah.
2 are gems that could make all the difference.
Correct. And a lot
owe it to yourself to go and get those ideas.
Correct. And get into an environment where that happens. Mark, thank you so much for today. Let's do a part 2 in 2 or 3 weeks' time, or in the new year, and continue with this, because there's a pile of questions I haven't asked, but I don't want it to go on forever. But we'll build on this, and I'll edit this up, send it to you, and you can say yep, no, whatever you want to do, and you can share it, and I'll share it, and we'll continue to make, as you say, let's make a profound difference together. Thank you, business veteran. I like it.
Thanks, Leigh. My
pleasure. See you soon. Thanks, mate.
Bye now.
Bye.